Hello, welcome to the first of the series of backpacking videos done by the Vista Grande High School Outdoor Program. My name is Paul Magnanti, or Paul Mags for short. Myself and the other instructors will be going over a series of topics that will let you prepare for backpacking. Some of these topics include leave no trace training, map and compass reading, how to gather gear, water treatment, and other topics that are some of the bedrock foundation of any kind of backpacking adventures. Once you follow these classes, you'll be prepared to take not only a class with your fellow students in the near future, but also perhaps do a little trip planning and get out on your own. After this class, we hope you'll be both efficient in the outdoors and safe, but most of all, be comfortable and have fun while out there. So a little bit about myself. My name is Paul Magnanti, or Paul Mags for short, and I love to backpack. I live in Moab, Utah, where I explore the canyon country and that stunning red rock as much as I possibly can. I work as a guide here. I do primarily backcountry and some front country activities in Canyonlands and Arches National Park, not far from where I'm standing right now. As mentioned, I like to backpack as much as I possibly can. I've done trips in the Canadian Rockies, spent some other time exploring Utah for about a month, even spent last fall walking northern New Mexico for about 30 days. Other things I've done is the Triple Crown of backpacking, which is the Appalachian, Pacific Crest, and Continental Divide trails, which means I spent a good amount of time in the backcountry because I do like it so much. But more importantly, what I really love to do is give some of this knowledge and passion I have to other people. Hopefully after watching these series of videos, you too will be comfortable with the idea and concepts of backpacking, so you can have your own similar fun and also maybe have some of that love that I've had for backpacking over the years too. And with that in mind, let's go to our first class. So the first topic we're going to cover is the difference between car camping gear and backpacking gear. Most of you are probably very familiar with car camping, the classic of pulling up to a camping spot for the weekend, having a nice fire, the big Coleman stove where you're cooking up your meals, a cooler full of cold drinks, and lots of equipment and clothing to be very comfortable throughout the weekend. Backpacking's different. The gear has to be lighter, more compact, because you're carrying it for 5, 10, or even 15 miles, sometimes even more, to get to that beautiful spot where you can see the sunset or the mountain lake. They're both enjoyable activities. I enjoy doing both, but they have a different set of goals and a different set of equipment. So we'll be looking at what you can take from your car camping gear that can be used for backpacking. And sometimes backpacking gear can be expensive. We're going to look at some normal items around your house you can repurpose for backpacking as well. And if you don't have that in the house, some budget items that let you be, again, safe and comfortable in the outdoors while still having lots of fun. So this is a pretty typical car camping setup. We have about a week's worth of food in that plastic tote on the bottom left. We have a cooler, a duffel bag full of clothing, a sleeping bag, a bulky but comfortable sleeping bag, and a plastic tote full of such things as a car camping stove, the 2 burners, all the kitchen accessories, everything else you can have a nice comfortable camp. This fits in the back of your car, maybe even the back seat if you have a small trunk, and can make you pretty comfortable in camp. Definitely not something you want to take while backpacking. For comparison, here's a typical backpack. This backpack will comfortably hold 5 days of food. I have an extra water bottle so you can gauge the size a bit better. With it, you can fit, as I said, 5 days of food, your sleeping bag, your shelter, etc., and be comfortable for 5 days while trekking in the mountains. It even fits into a small compact car, a lot easier too than the other car camping gear I just showed earlier. Now that I showed you what car camping gear looks like versus backpacking gear, at least visually, let's look at the pack a little more. We'll go over some concepts. This is just an overview of car camping versus backpacking gear. So we're not going to go too deep dive into lightweight gear or what's the best down puffy, etc. This is just a more of an overlook so you'll get familiar with the different concepts. So first, as I mentioned, this is the backpack. This isn't necessarily the gear I'll take all the time, but it's a representation of different gear for different trips. This is a pretty standard medium-sized backpack, not the lightest, not the heaviest. It's ULA Catalyst, just a good standard multi-purpose pack. You have your water bottle. I don't like these versus Camelbacks or similar, just because these are easier to fill up, they're light. Unlike an Nalgene bottle that you might be familiar with, it's a lot less expensive, weighs a lot less. An Nalgene bottle weighs about 6 ounces. This weighs 1.5 ounces. It's 1.5 liters. Good for the desert hiking out in Moab. $2 at any gas station. Another alternative water bottle is your sports drink bottle. This is about 1 ounce, has a wide mouth for easy fill up. 2 of these and you're good to go for most trips. Outside of my pack, I like to keep my rain gear handy. This is just a very simple rain shell. Very light, very portable. Again, won't get too far into the gear details for now, but it does allow ventilation as too. Pretty standard from what you might wear normally. Of course, I like some mittens that go over my gloves, which I'll show in a moment, just to keep the rain and drizzle out. Not very expensive at all. I think I paid $10 a pair for these. Just your standard fleece hat. Probably have a hat just like that at home. Gear doesn't have to be expensive. I paid $6 for this. I've used it for skiing, backpacking. It's become one of my favorite hats. And I always have these liner gloves. It's just enough to keep the chill off. They're found at any surplus store. They're $5 a pair, maybe $10 at the very most, sometimes online. But in any case, they're fairly durable. They weigh 1.5 ounces each, if that. And they're not expensive. I pair it with these shell mitts and creates a nice warm system for most 3-season conditions, basically spring through fall. So that's everything I keep in the front. The next thing I keep near the top is an empty food bag. That's a different video. But just all my gear and supplies and snacks, etc. Floss, toothpaste, spoon, toothbrush, little basic toiletries just to keep myself clean and fed in the backcountry. Just a very basic cook pot. You can find this at any discount store. It's called the grease pot. It's perfect for 2 people. I have a canister stove, which again I'll go into more detail a little later on. These stoves are $15 each. You can find this canister at any outdoor store. And it cooks enough water and meals for 2 people. Doesn't weigh much. And again, I like it because it's not overly expensive. And of course, my potty trowel and hand sanitizer for the obvious. I call this my office. If you can see, I'm all about repurposing items. This is just a priority mail envelope I received at some point. I keep some tent stakes in here, 6 of them. I also keep a compass in here, unless I'm using it a lot for certain trips. Some basic first aid items, which again we'll go more into later. A headlamp, some ibuprofen, things like that. Spare lighter if I need it. Nothing too fancy. Keep in a Ziploc within a Tyvek envelope. I'm all about Ziploc bags. This piece of clothing I use a lot. It's just a fleece pullover. Very thin. You'll hear people refer to it as a 100-weight. All that just means is a light fleece pullover. I like fleece because it dries quickly, especially in the New Mexico Rockies, where it's a little cooler and drier at night, and sometimes even on the ridge tops. Very light, and again, you can find it for $10 or $15 at any thrift store. It's what I use extensively. I also like a nice down puffy. Gives me insulation in camp or when I sleep at night. This one's a little on the expensive side. It just zips right up. But I'll show a budget alternative to it. Had this for a while. It's just warm enough for, again, spring through fall backpacking. There's thicker ones out there, which brings up a good point. You don't want to bring a cotton sweatshirt. because cotton, when it gets wet, will retain water, and it's very heavy and bulky as well. So again, a very basic fleece pullover like this, combined with the rain jacket I showed earlier, along with a puffy, you have a light, compressible system will keep you warm and dry in many different conditions. And again, we'll show you some budget alternatives that work well. I like taking what some people call thermals, long underwear, spare pair of camp socks, just for at night in case they get wet. Another pair of hiking socks. You'll hear these called base layers, thermal layers, long johns. Nothing fancy. I think I paid $10 for these bottoms, $15 for these tops. Any kind of discount store is going to sell them. A Dick's Sporting Goods, Target sells them pretty inexpensively. You don't have to spend a lot of money to be warm and comfortable. And these are the ones I actually use while backpacking. These are just some very light wind pants. You can also swap in some real rain pants, but I walk pretty fast and move all day, so a lot of times, unless I know it's going to be wet, say the Pacific Northwest, or during monsoon season, like you get up in the Pecos Wilderness, I might wear some real rain pants, but these are just enough to keep light precipitation off, keep me a little warmer, mainly dry as long as I'm moving, and I emphasize again, not expensive at all. This is a very typical sleeping pad. It's a very popular one, which is I included as an example. It's a Neo Air. It inflates, and it'll keep you asleep at night and nice and warm from the ground. I will emphasize that there are always less expensive alternatives, which I will go over. But this is a pretty popular one, which is why I wanted to show it. The disadvantage of this, you have to take a little better care of it than, say, a foam pad. But notice how light and compact it is. Weighs about 8 ounces. Some people consider it very comfortable. And again, keeps you off the cold ground. Moving along. This is a one-person tarp. I grabbed a tarp. It's what I use when I go solo. I'll use a more traditional tent when my girlfriend and I go backpacking together. It's light, sets up quickly. We'll do another video about tarps versus tents versus other types of shelters. This is what I'll take along. It's nice and compact, sets up easily, quick, light, etc. Protects you from all but the heaviest snow, most rain. I'm all about these type of tarps. And again, in our shelter video, we'll go into more detail. And of course, I line it all with a trash compactor bag. I do not like pack covers that you may be more familiar with. Pack covers tend to collect rain. They're heavier. They're expensive. And again, I don't think they're very effective. You line your pack with a trash compactor bag. Keeps out the water. It's amazing. One thing I do different is I keep my sleeping bag or a quilt. And all a quilt is just a sleeping bag minus the bottom. It's used by a lot of lightweight backpackers, but a sleeping bag for all intents and purposes. I just also keep it in a trash compactor bag separate. Doesn't compress it as much, keeps it fluffier in the long run, and keeps it dry. Now, all this gear I just showed you for 3 season conditions, that means spring, summer, and early fall, I'm warm, dry, and comfortable. Again, much different goals than a car camping trip. But with this gear with backpacking, I can have a wonderful outdoor experience and find myself very comfortable, and I don't have to take nearly as much gear. As I said, I'll show some less expensive alternatives too. That's the backpacking gear. Let's go a little bit into the clothes that you wear while hiking and backpacking. So we went over what's in the backpack, but just as important is what you actually hike with. The quick and dirty rule of backpacking clothing is very simple. No 100% cotton clothing. You don't want to wear blue jeans. They're going to soak up weather. They're going to get heavy. It can actually be dangerous when it's cold out. They're great for trail work or lounging around back at home, but not so much for backpacking. They can get it's just not very comfortable in the long run. They constrict, they don't breathe well, they're heavy, they're hot. Not a good thing. Likewise, don't wear a cotton t-shirt. Cotton t-shirt's very similar. It soaks up moisture, it doesn't dry out quickly, they kind of get heavy, and if it gets cold and wet and rainy, it's certainly going to affect you and make for a not very enjoyable time. But luckily there's some really easy things you can do using pretty ordinary clothing, stuff that's not very expensive, that's very effective. The first thing is some shoes. These are my old standby, worn throughout the desert. Salomon Ultra 3, it doesn't really matter the brand. You might be thinking, what about hiking boots? Well, hiking boots are heavy. They're great for mountaineering or skiing here with my ski boots, etc. But for most of the backpacking people are doing, just a pair of sneakers or trail runners or workout shoes, whatever you want to call them, are just fine. Some are better than others, depending on the shape of your foot, but the concept's all the same. It's not as heavy as a hiking boot, dries out quicker, and for most of the backpacking you're doing, you don't need a big, beef, sturdy boot. And if you keep your gear light and keep it minimal, you really don't need a big, heavy boot. As I said, between being lighter, they're also less expensive, they dry out quicker. They're just a lot more comfortable to hike in. Look at all the rest of my gear here. The other important thing is some non-cotton socks. Do not wear the cotton gym socks, but you don't need to go too fancy. Every discount store sells running socks now, and all they are is simply synthetic socks, sometimes a little bit of wool in them, that dry quickly, won't cause blisters and chafing as easily as cotton socks. Again, you may even have one already in your closet if you do some workouts and such. Just your standard running socks from any discount store. Again, no cotton. Moving up the chain and repeating a theme, these are some non-cotton briefs, or you can get some boxers if you prefer. Again, synthetic. You can find them at any discount store nowadays, at Dick's Sporting Goods, any place that sells workout gear. They dry quickly, they won't cause chafing, and just a lot more comfortable when you're hiking all day or 2, 3, 4 days than cotton boxer shorts are similar. Now, I prefer long pants for my backpacking. If you go off trail or if you scramble, they just provide more protection, and also from insects and the sun. These are just found at, I want to say, Costco. I bought them. They're just standard nylon spandex hiking pants. Walmart sells the Wrangler version. That's about $25 a pair. Very comfortable, work extremely well. They're light and they dry quickly, much like these. Again, you don't have to spend a lot of money just to go hiking. Some people prefer shorts if you're mainly on trail. The weather's going to be consistently nice. Some people prefer them. They do breathe a lot better and they're a lot more comfortable. Plus, as I said, you may already have a pair of workout shorts anyway that'll work just as well for backpacking. Now, this is my one piece of clothing, other than the bandana here, that actually has some cotton in it. This is actually just your standard Western plaid shirt. You may have one in your collection. I actually prefer it to a real hiking shirt. I find it breathes better, it's a lot more comfortable. It's mainly polyester with some cotton, but because of a little bit of cotton content, I just find it's a lot more comfortable. Plus it's thin, so it dries quick enough, and if it really gets cold and wet, I'll change in thermals that I showed earlier. A brand new one of these Western style plaid snaps are 20 bucks. If you find it on thrift store for 10 or 15, compared to a hiking shirt that's 60, 70, or even 80 bucks. It's just hiking, don't need anything too fancy, and frankly, as I said, I prefer this non-fancy version. Worn it for hundreds of miles at this point, this very shirt. I won't use anything else at this point, just because they're so comfortable, practical, and very useful. Finally, going up the head, I do have 100% cotton bandana. Cotton does absorb water, so it acts as a swamp cooler essentially, moves the sweat away. I'm unfortunately bald, so if I wear a hat, all the sweat collects underneath it and it gets very uncomfortable. If I wear a bandana, it just kind of wicks the sweat away from me. And speaking of which, I wear a wide brimmed hat. Some people prefer ball caps. I like a wide brimmed hat just because it provides more sun protection. Don't need as much sunscreen other than my cheeks and my nose, especially the long sleeve shirt with the collar. Very light, repels light rain too if need be. And again, not terribly expensive. I think I paid 10 bucks for this one just here in the town of Moab. Combine this with my bandana, I have some great and comfortable sun protection. And the other advantage of the bandana, of course, it's used for a lot of different things. You can use it for first aid purposes. You can use it to wipe off your face when you get some water from the stream. Some easy cleaning at camp at night, etc. It's just a very useful item to have. Paired with this, I'm just very comfortable all day while hiking. Don't need anything fancy, just keep it simple. So as I mentioned, backpacking gear and outdoor gear in general can unfortunately be very expensive. But I don't believe that gear has to be expensive to go with our three principles of being safe, being comfortable, and having fun. There are many alternatives you might already have in your house, or if you don't have them in your house, you can go to any discount store to get the appropriate gear. When I started out backpacking, more years ago than I want to admit at this point, I used my mom's cook pot from the house. That she happened to have a spare one. I don't think I told her, sorry mom, but it worked really well for me. You can use a sports drink bottle. You don't need a fancy Nalgene. You don't need to go to that big expensive store that starts with an R, which I won't mention the rest of the letters. They sell some good gear, but you don't necessarily need it. As I show with my own kit, I still go inexpensive too. Not because it is inexpensive, but because it's lighter in many cases. And frankly, I think it works better for me than the more expensive alternatives. So I'm just going to quickly show some inexpensive alternatives you can use that will work well for you. And you may already have some from your own car camping gear. And again, stuff around the house. So the most expensive thing for many people, as I said, are these lovely pads here. They're very comfortable, they're very light for the comfort they provide. But, I mean, this is well over $100, so it can be a little expensive and a little fragile. A foam pad works pretty well. Maybe it's not quite as comfortable, but it's a lot lighter. You can cut down these sections very easily if you want to make it even lighter or if you're shorter. And they're not expensive at all. They're a little bulky, but you can easily attach to the outside of your pack. I actually still use these in winter combined with a pad like this for a very nice backpacking system. If you're just starting out, use a foam pad. And frankly, it's what I still use for my own 3-season backpacking. Moving along to rain gear. I absolutely love my rain jacket that I was given for testing. It's very light. It's fairly breathable, keeps off the rain, packs up to nothing. It's also on the expensive side, unless you use it all the time. A great alternative are what called frog togs. Frog togs are found at almost any discount store, any hunting store. They're extremely inexpensive. You can buy pants and a jacket for 20 bucks. They're a little baggy, but you can lay your clothes better. They're fairly waterproof. They fold up to nothing. Just be careful of the zipper here. And they're pretty light, about 5 or 6 ounces per jacket, depending upon the size. You have to be a little careful with these. If you're hiking on trail, they're a great way to get some rain gear protection without having to get, say, a very bulky, like yellow rain jacket you might be familiar with, like say from the construction type store or what have you, or the fisherman's store. But this is very light, compacts well, and again with the pants and the jacket, it's 20 bucks. Just be careful. It's not quite as durable, but good enough for a weekend backpacking trip. And again, some people prefer this for longer trips too. Down puffies can be very expensive. They're light, they're comfortable, they're warm, but they're somewhat on the expensive side, especially if you're just starting out. One alternative I absolutely love, and I always keep a spare of it in the car. This is from the military surplus store. This is called an M65 liner jacket. The buttons kind of came off, but you put this over underneath your rain jacket rather. It weighs about 10 ounces for men's large. It provides a surprisingly good amount of warmth, especially with the rain jacket over it. It's synthetic, so it dries quickly. Overall, it's just a good piece of warm gear. You may be tempted to use your cotton sweatshirt, but again, do not do that. It'll get wet, it won't keep you warm, it takes forever to dry. This is very inexpensive. You can find it on any surplus store. They sell these on eBay surplus stores with shipping for about $10 or $15. I used one before, still use it as a spare in the car. They work great, especially again worn under a rain jacket. Now shoes, can be expensive too. I mean, I buy these shoes all the time. I also do kind of off-trail scrambling here in Utah. You don't necessarily need that though if you're going to be going mainly on trail. The shoes you use for your gym workouts work great. These are what I use for my gym workouts. If I was going on trail with just general running sneakers, I think they'd be just fine, especially for short trips when you're starting out. As long as the shoes are comfortable and they fit you, and you'll know that from working out or just being around town or gym class, you know they'll work well for you. I did the Pacific Crest Trail and started with Nike Air Pegasus, just some very general running sneakers. These aren't too far removed from them. And I use them for my gym workouts, and for on trail hiking I've done around here in town once in a while, they work just fine. So that's what you have, that's what you should use. Again, don't bother with heavy leather boots. The shoes you use for your gym workouts, just fine. Now, as I mentioned, I said I prefer hiking pants, but not everyone does. Nylon or polyester gym shorts or running shorts work just fine. You probably have some from gym class or whatever. Some people prefer like the gym legging tights. Those work very well. Again, they're not cotton and they're comfortable and they work for you. Why not go for it? On a similar note, some people don't prefer a long sleeve. I tend to like short sleeve plaid, wear it all the time. This is a very similar shirt that I use for day hikes once in a while. It's very comfortable. Again, very inexpensive. It's probably one in the thrift store right now. And I actually prefer it to a so-called real hiking shirt. A little bit of sun protection. The short sleeve doesn't give as much sun protection, but ventilates a little better. So it's all a preference. But again, you don't have to spend a lot of money to be very comfortable while hiking and backpacking. On a similar note, I kind of alluded to it. You can get away with a sports drink bottle. This weighs an ounce, comes with a drink, found at any gas station, grocery store, whatever, versus these very popular water bottles. This weighs about 5 ounces. It's about $15. It's a little bulkier too. And they may look cool with the stickers and everything, but this is much more utilitarian, holds your drink just as well. And when you buy it, it comes with a drink too. And finally, you'll see all kinds of fancy headlamps out there. All a headlamp is, it's easier to use than a flashlight. You can see, just put it on your head like that. Looks like a miner's headlamp. My younger brother thought it looked like the Ghost Hunters from the TV show, whatever you might call it. All it is a flashlight you wear on your head. They're light. They weigh 3 ounces, if not less, but you don't have to spend a lot of money. You can find any headlamp like this in any hardware store, even grocery stores now. Sometimes with batteries, sometimes USB. $10, and it's a very handy thing to have. I keep one in my car as a spare. They're just a good item to have all around. But again, you don't have to spend $40 just to light up while you make your hot cocoa, maybe go into the bathroom at night. A key thing, but don't have to spend a lot of money doing it. As I emphasized, there'll be some gear lists at the end of all this with some other links you can go to help facilitate getting cheaper gear, and that also works very well. But additionally, we're going to go a deeper dive into gear at some later videos. For now, just a little overlook at some car camping gear versus backpacking gear and how to get backpacking gear without breaking the piggy bank. So one thing to keep in mind about backpacking versus car camping. When you're car camping, remember that picture I showed earlier with all the gear. You have your stove, you have your big water cooler, you have another cooler full of cold drinks, a pantry full of all kinds of yummy food. Well, you're carrying in a car. Backpacking, you have to pack minimally. If you start adding 5 pairs of socks, that extra sweatshirt made of cotton, so you shouldn't take it anyway, the extra warm hat, an extra pair of pants, etc., before you know it, your minimal trip doesn't fit into this bag. You need a bigger pack and you're carrying more gear. It's heavier, it's not as fun. Backpacking at its core is about minimalism. You're getting into some really cool places that people can't see, and it's a lot of fun. But if you're schlepping a lot of gear to get up there, it's not going to be fun at all. So try to take as little as comfortably possible. At the end of this video, I'm going to have some links for a basic packing list, etc. And that'll help you guide along. And what I found over the years, I have a very basic packing list. Whether I'm going with my girlfriend, I'm taking a 2-person tent, or going very minimal with a tarp, I find this list doesn't change. The only exception is winter backpacking, which is another different skill set we're not even going to get into. But for now, just think pack minimally so you can do 3 things. And the 3 important things are, in my opinion, are be safe, be comfortable, and have fun. If you're not safe, it's hard to be comfortable. If you're not comfortable, it's hard to have fun. And a way to have all 3 of these components together is pack correctly, pack the right gear that's going to make you comfortable, but don't pack so much comfortable gear that you're not going to have fun while hiking. Packing a light mug to enjoy a hot drink at night while overlooking the lake is fantastic. Maybe packing that stainless steel thermos that has a big Stanley symbol on it, not so much. So just keep that in mind when packing. Go minimally, but pack enough to be safe and have fun. And what that is going to differ from person to person. As you gain more experience, you might find one set of gear works better than the other. And frankly, and this is the case for me, different trips require different gear. Are you hiking 10, 15, 20 miles day after day, like say the Appalachian or Continental Divide Trail? Or are you going to go fishing 5 miles up the trail and spend a weekend going backpacking there, in which case you can take a few extra luxury items. So again, I will have some packing lists at the end of the video, as well as some other tips. But when you're doing your first backpacking trip, keep it in mind. As we do other videos, we'll go in a deeper dive into gear. But from now, be safe, be comfortable, and most of all, have fun.